Welcome to the Pause It podcast. I am Dr. Sam, and with me, as always, is Dr. Robert. Welcome, Dr. Robert.
Hey Sam, how you doing? I should call you
I'm
Dr.
really
Sam too,
good.
I guess. I'm sorry.
What do you say?
I should call you Dr. Sam as well. I don't know why I don't.
Oh, I don't really care.
Well, I think most doctors don't. I think most of the time they're like, I don't care if you call me doctor or I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, it's funny. It's actually like a pretty big thing at my clinic. Everybody calls me doctor. And
Oh,
I'm
really?
always like, you guys can call me Sam. I really don't care. And they're like, no, we can't. We can't do it. You're doctor. You're Dr. Dawson. I'm like, all right, whatever. Like, it's definitely not for me, for sure. Cause
Oh no.
I
I
don't care
like
at all.
as long as you use my last name, that's pretty good. I have some technicians that call me Parky, and you guys know who I'm talking to. Not okay. That's like the only thing I'm not okay with. But outside of that,
Okay, I
uh,
think that that's fair. That might be
yeah,
a little offsides.
yeah. So, but otherwise, yeah, doesn't bother me too much.
Yeah,
But
nobody calls me
anyway,
Dawes or anything like that. They're
hey,
just like,
Dawes.
no, I'm definitely Dr. Dawson. Dr. Dawson.
I'm gonna start calling you Dawes. What up,
Hey
Dawes?
Dawes. What's up, Dawes? But
Yeah, that's funny.
so I'm very excited because we have a first today, which is very, very cool.
Yep, I'm excited for it too. I was waiting for us to get one, so I'll
I
let you
know,
explain
me
the question.
too. So every week we always say, send us an email. We'll maybe dedicate an entire show. Well, this is it. We are dedicating an entire show because we were inspired by our very first email, which I think
Mhm.
is very, very cool. And I'm very excited. So kind of shout out to Brittany from San Diego for sending us an email. And it was a really interesting question. So, basically, her question was she had heard a rumor that you can get fired by your vet. And she wanted to know if this is true, number one, and also how does that happen and how do you avoid it? Which I think was like a really awesome question. So, that is leading us into our topic for today, which is basically like our number one. Well, we'll first talk about like what can get you fired because
Yes,
you
we'll answer
can
the
get
question first.
fired.
Yes.
It can happen. It is real. Um and then like what are some of our pet peeves? Like what are some of the things that people do that they don't realize might kind of irk their veterinarians a little bit? So
Yes. This will be a good venting session for a lot of us, and I'm very excited to see where it goes.
yeah, I mean, maybe we may have to put like an explicit warning on this one because sometimes I get a little fired up
You
about
have
some of these
children.
things.
Yeah, if you have children, maybe not the best one to
This
listen
isn't the
to.
one to listen to with the kids. It's like a sweet veterinary podcast. You're like, well, maybe not this one. But yeah, I think it's important to know that couple of things. For me, I would say, for the most part, many veterinary clinics are small businesses.
Mhm.
They're owned by people who are out there just really trying to kind of make a difference, save some animals, practice medicine. And um we don't actually have to really like it's not like a human hospital or something like we're not required to service anybody specifically, right? I mean, like
Yeah,
we can
definitely
turn you
not.
away if we feel that that's the right thing to do.
And I know I have personally for certain clients that were very rude. And we'll talk about some of our pet peeves and why that was one of them. And I think that's your biggest one.
It is.
So
It
I'll
is
let
my
you start
number
with that
one
one.
one. Mhm. Yeah.
But when yeah, certain things will cause clients to get fired, and I've done it a couple times just because it's necessary. And I just I think we're in a transition right now because I think for the last 20 years, even in other industries as well, it's always been consumer. The consumer is always right,
Right.
always. And
Mhm.
I think every industry has gone towards that ideology. But now I think we're starting to see a transition to focusing on the employee again, which is
Mhm.
not a bad thing. I think it's actually a good
Mhm.
thing. Not that you shouldn't keep the consumer close in mind,
Mhm.
but to the point where if it's ruining the culture of the hospital or wherever you do work, because you're always like, the customer's always right, the customer's always right, but sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
I think we've
No.
all seen a swing that that's not the truth anymore. So yeah, that's I think why some of this has come about more recently, and I've seen a lot more hospitals fire clients because honestly, we're busy enough right now too, where we don't need an extra client. We're happy to say, "Hey, you can go find another hospital," because we have a lot of patients that do wanna see us that are not doing what you're doing.
Right, right. And I think it's really important to know this is not something that we do easily or that we enjoy doing, right?
Mm,
So like at the end of the day, there's always a real like consideration of like we don't ever want to do anything that's going to put a patient or an animal in peril, right? Like I
Yeah.
think that's always like number one top of our before anything else, really. Like
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is the reason why we got into this truly is to help animals and to help the people who love their animals, right? But I cannot stress that abusing the staff of a veterinary clinic is not going to help your pet. It's just not going to. And there's no reason to do it. And more, you see even like when you go to your own doctor,
Mhm.
signs up that say like if you yell, abuse, threaten any of those things, you will be denied a service. Even
Yes.
in the human world, right? Where
Yeah.
like there's like a completely different kind of set of rules that they go by that we
Oh, yeah.
don't. Um and at the end of the day, we want to run a successful business. We want to take care of our patients, of our pets and everything else.
Mm,
But you cannot abuse the staff. You just can't do it. You can't threaten them.
mm.
I get very, very upset. Probably one of my biggest pet peeves. Like I am very loyal to the people that I work with. They make my life better
Very
every
motherly.
day.
Very
I
motherly.
I am. I'm like a mama bear. I really kind of am. And like the people who I work with, they are wonderful people who work so hard, do not get paid nearly what they are worth.
Yeah.
And for them to be mistreated by people when they're just really trying to help, and like mistakes get made,
Yeah.
things happen. People are human. I'm human. Every single person at my clinic is human, but they do a really good job and they try really, really hard to make sure that they're trying to meet people's expectations. And I
Mhm.
feel like sometimes people's expectations are very unrealistic,
Yeah.
sometimes very uninformed, which is part of our job to educate, I think. Um, but I just really have a problem with a lack of respect to people who are trying to help you.
Mm.
And is probably my biggest pet peeve when they are nice to me and rude to everybody else on the way to get to me.
I would agree 100%. I think it's
That
something
gets me.
and we talk. It's not
All of
like
us talk. Yeah.
yeah, it's not like the front desk keeps it to themselves, like, they'll pass it along to the technician, who will then pass it along to the doctor and be like, "Yeah, they were really rude to me," and the first thing I'll do, like, I'll walk into them afterwards and be like, "I can't have you talk to my clients that way or my staff that way because
Yeah.
if that's the case, like, I'm not gonna see you."
Right.
And most of the time they apologize afterwards, but we shouldn't have to get to that part in the first place.
No. Mm-mm.
So there's
And
no
I
need
think
to
it's
it.
probably harder for you, I would imagine, because you're dealing almost always with emotions that are here. You know what I'm saying? So people are not
Yeah,
maybe their best selves. And it's fair. Like I have bad days, I'm not nobody's getting fired from a vet clinic for one day. You know what I mean? Like one time you came in and you had a bad day. I'm just saying, I mean, it has to be really, really bad. And also too, you have to think like you're seeing one-offs. Like
yeah,
we see people for months and months and years and years
yes,
and years. So it's a little different. Maybe I shouldn't speak for every clinic, right? But
yeah,
for the most part, you have to work really hard to have one encounter be the issue. Like it
yeah.
has to be so egregious that there's no question that this is just not going to be a fruitful relationship.
Yeah, definitely, I think the worst one I had was, a client threw a clipboard at one of my technicians.
Okay, yeah, that would be
Yeah,
enough.
I was like, "Man, yeah, we're not treating you, that's not okay, like, that's
No.
just"
But that's violence.
so
I mean, that's assault, really. I mean,
yeah,
that's
but it
not
shocks me
verbal.
that it was even an issue in the first place, like, if you had told me on a random day, I'd be like, "That doesn't happen," and I was proven wrong that day, so,
Yeah.
and again, 99% of people listening to this conversation, this is never an issue with,
No, no,
but
no. And
yeah,
again, like for the person who wrote in who's worried about it, I can almost guess they're never gonna have the problem because 'cause they're worried about it. You know what I
exactly.
mean?
If you're
So
self-aware about it, you're
yeah,
fine.
you know, I think the other thing is so it's like so okay, yeah, it has to be something egregious like that. Like if you are gonna cause someone bodily harm or you're threatening somebody, that's not okay. I don't care if you're talking about a veterinary situation. There's just no reason that that ever needs to happen in a
Yeah,
store, anything. Never. It just never needs to happen. So we shouldn't have to tell you that. That shouldn't be any kind of news. But like I think the other thing is if you are chronically every time you call somebody, like, you're rude to somebody, you're mean to
Yeah.
somebody, you're yelling at somebody, everything's a problem. Every time you're gonna, like, you know what I mean? Like, that I do think starts to wear on, like you said, the culture, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you constantly have somebody who is just never happy, always, calling, or we've had, people who will, like, okay something, and then
Sure.
they'll call back and say, like, I didn't okay that, and I'm not, and I want my money back, but, like, and it's like, if it happens one time, mistake gets made, all right, cool, but
Yeah.
it becomes a pattern sometimes, and I think then you start to get into this, like, I mean, if everything's going to be a fight, then maybe this isn't a good fit. You need to find a place where it's not a fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
I totally agree.
yeah, and I think too, but it's also incumbent upon the veterinary clinic, I think, to also then be really fair and be very upfront and say, like, okay, this is what we're going to charge you. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I always, like, try to, no matter what, like, when people are like, oh, I don't care, money doesn't matter. I'm like, that's true. That might be great. That's cool. I don't know anyone's situations, but I'm still going to give you an estimate so that you know what I'm doing, and I'm not doing anything that you haven't told me I can do.
Yep.
Even if you've
And
told me I don't care, spend $1,000,000. Okay, well, I'm still gonna show you how much because I don't ever want it to be a surprise. Because I'm not here to take advantage of anybody. I'm here to be totally upfront. This is how much it's gonna cost, you know?
yep. And to be transparent about things, there is no mean client charge. However, there is a nice client discount where if you're not an ass, like if you're being really nice and like we just sometimes we'll forget the sub Q fluids or something like that because you know you made my day easier. Like
Yeah,
honestly, I
sometimes the
have
ultrasound will just fall on a bladder.
exactly. It's like, oh, how'd that happen? It's fine. Your dog got running. I wasn't looking. But there is a nice person discount, but you only get that if you're making my life easier. And I've had owners just leave be like, "Hey, I'm so thankful for what you guys are doing." And sometimes that's all it is. That's just enough to make my day a little bit easier because the last 4 clients I saw tore my head off for something, and I'm like, "You're the one today that made my day better. I'm gonna try and make your day a little easier too." And
Mhm.
because statistically, veterinarians give away a significant amount of money. Someone quoted, and I'm trying to refer or find the validity of the statistic, over like $100,000 a year in free services.
It doesn't surprise me actually because, and this gets into one of the other pet peeves, which is, like, people assuming that, like, somehow we are rolling in cash. We are not, just so you know.
No.
Like, people do not become veterinarians or go into the veterinary industry for the money
Mhm.
because that would be very silly.
Yes, it
We
would
have
be
one of the
just
worst to income ratios of all.
across the board. It's the
Yeah,
highest in the country.
yeah, and
So,
actually, sadly, one of the highest suicide rates. I mean, like, not to really get into that, which I'm sure we'll have to talk about at some point in time, but, like, there's a ton of compassion fatigue. There's a ton
mhm,
of veterinarians who get really disheartened because really, like, we show up to work every day, and really we're there to help pets and help patients, and it can get wearing when you're not being if you're being abused, if you aren't in a situation where somebody is looking out for making sure that those clients aren't constantly beating you down. And honestly, like, one of the worst things for me is when I know I can fix something, but the client doesn't have the money. I mean, we're a small business. Yes, we are a veterinary clinic, but, like, there's only so many resources. Our margins are what they are. We have to charge money in order to pay our bills, stay open, pay the employees to be there for your pet when they have an emergency. And, like, it really is like we do care about pets, but we can't give away
yeah,
free care all the time or else we'd be out of business. So there's nothing more heartbreaking to me than not being able to fix things that are fixable. I mean, it's awful when it's something that's not fixable too, right? I mean, like, if I have to
yeah,
sit there and tell someone that their beloved pet, their family member is not going to be with us anymore, it's awful. And it's very, very hard because we didn't get into this because we don't love pets. You know what I mean? And animals in
yeah.
general.
No, I think that's such a it's a hard thing to show to. And I think some owners have understanding of that. They always will say, "This must be the hardest part of your job,"
Right.
or I can't do what you do."
Hmm.
And honestly, a lot of us can't do what we do, and that's why there's such a high burnout rate.
Yeah.
Um, it's a tough thing. Like even I think this last Easter, happy Easter by the way, everyone.
Oh,
Post
yeah.
Easter, sorry. I euthanized 6 patients that night, and my
Oh my
colleagues did another five
gosh,
within
it's
like 6 hours.
horrible.
It was a horrible stretch of patients. And this whole and a few of them were financial, and a few of them had really bad illnesses. But at the end of the day, it's like it doesn't. At the end of the day, you just remember they were all sad, and that's it's a tough part of it. So yeah, yeah, the financial part of it's tough. And that's why we actually created the myBalto Foundation,
Yeah, right,
to help kind
exactly,
of
yeah.
alleviate some of that stress on the veterinary industry for some of the things that we can maybe fix, which is some of the financial discussions we have around putting pets to sleep.
Yeah,
So that's kind of the exciting part about what we're doing, and we hope to give more information on that soon.
right. And I think, like, not just to try to be, like, plugging this whole idea of what like, where my Balto came from, but, like, honestly, it is something where when we can fix something and finances are the thing standing in the way, it's like, there's gotta be a different way. And it's not that we'll be able to fix every time that that happens, you know? I mean, that's
Yeah,
why there's insurance, that's why there's care credit, but sometimes those things aren't enough. And
yeah,
there's this big donut hole that we're trying to fill.
yep,
And so I am really excited to be able to try to just make lives better for these patients where that's possible. And I think that that's
mm,
something that is something that we're really, really going to be able to share with the world and be able to do. And I think it's really exciting.
yeah. I couldn't agree more, and I'm so glad you joined the team. So it's
Well, I'm
we're very
glad you
lucky.
had me join
Yeah.
the team. So, um, and I think one of the other things, well, while we're on this topic of the whole my Balto thing too, is like where this even all started from, and it gets into one of our other pet peeves when people come to the clinic and they don't have all the information about their pets, right? So, like you see it with like, oh, I don't know, we had this diagnostic done or that diagnostic done, or we went to this clinic or that clinic, we've been here or there or everywhere, and there's like just all this stuff, and like you may have only half of it, you may not have gotten the
Mhm.
most recent stuff. For us it's like we have records from this clinic or that clinic, or we haven't been, we had a puppy thing, or and it's like, okay, what if it was all just in one spot? That would be
Yes.
great. And so that's another thing that we're trying to fix. I mean, really, some of these pet peeves are totally fixable, and so
Mhm.
we're just trying to fix them.
Yep. We're trying to make lives for you and us easier because it
Yeah.
is taxing. And now there's technology. I mean, everybody's seen it now with like AI being what it is and all these other cool things out there. This is a very old school problem. We can fix this. So that's
Yeah,
what we're
yeah,
trying to
we
do
got
it.
some new school ways to fix this, so
The world has moved on, and veterinary medicine likes to be about 10 to 20 years behind everything else. So we're working on it.
yeah. Well, and this is one of those things that's not gonna cost a ton of money. It's not gonna, you know what I mean? It's gonna
Mhm.
be something that's like very attainable. And so hopefully it'll just be something that once we can get the word out there, it's like, yes, this will make your life easier. That's
Yep.
really what we want. Cause like I would really like to foster this idea of like, can we all just be a team? Can we all be there for the same goal,
Yep.
all try to help each other? And at the end of the day, everybody's happy. That would be like kind of awesome.
And that's what my Balto's here to do.
Yes.
So hopefully, a couple of years, guys, we're gonna get there and change some things. So we're very
Exactly.
excited.
Yeah.
And we go ahead. And
No, I was
probably
just gonna say pet peeves. Well, because I was gonna say this leads into so like yeah, that like not having the information that you need, but also like when you have a family member that brings your pet to the vet, please tell them why they're there.
oh, it happens all the time though. It's so funny. Like it's not like a one off. It's all the time.
No, all the time, all the you're not gonna get fired for this. Let's just put
Yeah.
that out there. Like this
Yeah.
is not a fireable offense. I think we've kind of covered like the things that will actually get you fired, and now we're just on
Yes.
to some of the little things that you're like, come on,
Yes.
and like we want to do the best job possible. We want to not waste your money. So the
Mhm.
best way to do that is to make sure whoever brings your pet to the vet knows what medications they're on, what
Mhm.
the concerns are, why they're there, when they were last normal, and if you can't tell them that, write it down. Send an email.
Yes.
Like I don't even like just but make sure that that person knows, because the amount of times someone's like, "Well, I don't really take care of that," or "I haven't been home," or "My pet doesn't actually live with me anymore. He lives with my sister 3 hours away and I don't know. I haven't seen him in 3 weeks." It's like,
I
"Okay."
don't know how it happens so often. It's like, and honestly, I'll admit, there's definitely, in my experience, so take this and avoid. There's definitely a predisposition towards guys not knowing anything about their pets. It's always the guy like 2 a.m. He's like,
My
"This is my
wife told me
boyfriend's
I had
dog."
to come.
Yep. He's like, my wife told me to get out of bed. The dog's vomiting. I'm like, "Well, what's going on?" He's like, "Honestly, I don't even know what food they eat. I don't know what medications they're on." I'm like, "All right, starting from square one."
Can you
And that's
call
why
your wife?
and call your wife because like she needs to answer the phone because those questions are really important to what we're doing, and also why we create myBalto. Because if you get that, you can have a co-parent, and all the information's on your phone, and you don't
Yeah.
have to call them
Put
in the
everything
morning.
there, and then you can leave them alone, they can sleep.
So I promise this isn't like a myBalto plug, but these things are very applicable to what we're doing. So
Well, I think it's because we're trying to solve those problems. I mean, they're
yes.
like not like you said, they're not one-offs. Like it happens all the time where people like
Mhm,
have no information. Oh, and even the people who do have the information, please don't get annoyed with us when we ask you what meds you're giving, how often
mhm,
you're giving them, or what preventatives they're on. I can't tell you how many times a day someone tells me, "Oh, well, you have it in the computer." And it's like,
mhm.
"Yes, I do. I know what we gave you. I don't know what you gave them." So, we're not asking like, and there is a possibility you could be giving something else. People all the time are doing CBD or, some other thing that we didn't send them home with, melatonin, like whatever it is. And some of these things do have interactions with drugs that we're giving, or if we're putting them under anesthesia or something like that. And like the biggest thing is like we're not asking necessarily just like what they're on, but like how are you giving it? Because I can't tell you how many times I've prescribed something and then I've asked people how they're giving it, or my technician has or something, and that is not what's written on the bottle.
It's so true. It's funny how often that happens. They're like, "Oh, yeah," like, they'll call back in a week, say, "Yeah, we're supposed to have antibiotics for 2 weeks, but we're out of antibiotics already." I'm like, "That's not possible." And then I find out they were giving, like, too many capsules each day. I'm like, "Well, that's because you used 2 weeks worth in a week, and your dog's been having diarrhea, and now I know why."
Right.
So, it's so, yes, that information
Or
we're asking, yeah, for a
I
purpose.
I even had somebody like I think it said like every 12 hours on the
Mhm.
thing, and so they were giving it once a day. And I was like, "Well, there's 24 hours in a day." And they were like, "Oh yeah." Like, it just didn't register, you know what I mean? Like, it's just an innocent mistake, but just, like, the way they read it, and that happens. I mean, and not only that, we make mistakes. I mean,
Oh,
we
yeah.
try to always have all of our medications double checked by somebody else so those things don't happen. We are
Yes.
all human. And so sometimes it's literally just like, okay, well, your dog got sent home with 3 different medications. Well, one is a 3 times a day, the other one's a 2 times a day, and the other one's a 1 time a day. Well, what happens if those bottles get confused and now
Mhm.
you got into the routine of doing it and the blue pill is this time and the pink pill is this time, and then uh-oh, we started giving the blue pill this time and the pink pill, you know what I mean? Like it
Oh, yeah.
happens. So,
Yeah.
I think it's really important that we're really not trying to be annoying. We're actually trying to figure out what are you doing at home that might be different than what we have written in the record?
Yes, and I will say from experience, just an emergency side of things, a lot of times I will be like, "Oh, it's in the record," and some of you don't realize your record is 100 pages long. If you want me to ever see you in the clinic, I cannot read through all those pages to make sure I know all things, so I kinda look for the highlight reel. I know what we're talking about before we get in there, and I know some things, but we like to know some finer details, and you might have a primary veterinarian you've seen in between your last visit that things have changed. So,
Mhm.
it's really important to share that information and just answer my technician's questions because it makes everything go much, much faster. I promise. It may not seem like it, but it does.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And too, like, I think sometimes people get a little bit annoyed, like, if more than one person's like, the receptionist kind of, like, when they're making the phone call, like, they kind of get a history a little bit and they put that in there. And then it's like the technician comes in and they get a history. And then we come in and kind of rediscuss the history. And part of the reason that we do that is so that you hear, again, like what you've said to somebody else or how it was received by somebody else. So that by the time I come in, it's like, you've had time to think about this history now, and I can't tell you how many times A to B to C has changed quite a bit, number 1. Or number 2, you thought about like 8 other things that you're like, "Oh yeah, and this. Oh, it could have also been this."
Mm,
And that's not because you did something wrong or you don't know what's going on. It's because it like giving a good history is very hard,
yes.
especially if you're not like really practiced at it and when
Mhm,
you're worried about your pet. So I think like the more opportunity you have to talk about what might be going on, you never know where that aha moment comes in where you're like, "Oh, they did what?" Or you gave them
mhm.
this, or, "Oh, I didn't know about that," you know? And,
Oh, yeah.
it's funny.
It's easily my technician's number 1 pet peeve. Hands down, not even a question. Like, the amount of times I will go into the room afterwards, like, "Oh, yeah, they did this too." And they're like, "Why didn't they tell me that?" I'm like,
Yeah, every
It's
time.
number one, it's easily the number one pet peeve. I'll put my money on it right now because it's
Oh,
literally
yeah.
always their complaint. So it's
Yeah.
you do remember things afterwards, and there's a reason we ask these questions a couple
Multiple
times.
times, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also too, my technicians always joke that, like, I will always think of one other question that they didn't ask. Like
That one.
they'll give me these, like, excellent histories. They'll be like, "And then this, and this is last normal, and this is what they were eating, and this da 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 da," and I'm like, "Oh, well, what did the vomit look like?" And they're like, I don't know. I didn't ask that, or like, what kind of food do they eat? Oh, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, well, you did such a good job giving me a history. That's why I thought of this crazy question. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, you covered all the bases. I'm just curious if you asked this. But I think
See,
they get mad at me sometimes. They're like, oh, come on. I just wanted you one time to be like, all right, that's everything.
that's literally like my mom when I go on dates with people or I catch up with people I haven't seen in a while. She's like,
Hmm.
"Oh, what was this about? What was this about?" And I'm like, "Well, I asked questions." She's like, "Did you guys not talk about anything on the date?" I'm like, "Yeah, I asked questions. I just didn't ask those questions." And she's like, "Why don't you talk to them?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, mom." So it's apparently I do it as well, but just not to the same extent our technicians do. So, oh man.
But no, it does happen, and I feel like I always have to remind my technicians, I'm like, "I was a tech before too, and I know that I asked all these questions, and I know that the answers changed, like, I don't think
Mm,
you didn't do your job, like, it's totally fine," you know what I
yes,
mean? So, they
very
get
much.
worried that we think like, "Oh, you didn't ask, you don't care," and it's like, "I know you care, don't worry."
Oh yeah, 100%. So, oh man, pet peeves.
Yeah, I know, it's funny, and then, the other thing kinda going along the same topic is, like, we I like to be very thorough. I like to go through everything that's happened, anything that we've seen on the exam, any kind of like diagnostics. Like, so if I'm calling you on the phone with a diagnostic or I'm explaining it to you in person, um, if you're not the person that I should be giving this information to, stop me and tell me that.
Please.
And then tell me to talk to who I need to talk to. Because I think that people don't realize that I don't, as much as I wish I could call every member of your family and tell them what was going on from, beginning to end and explain everything in great detail, just like I did for the last 20 minutes for you.
Mhm,
I don't have that 20 minutes to recreate again because now somebody
yeah,
else is waiting on their results and I have to call them and there's only so many hours in a day. So I really do wish people would say, you know what, I'm not the person who's going to make the decision, or I don't really understand these types of things. Can you talk to my wife or can you talk to my husband? Or
yes,
if you're going to tell me, can you give me like the highlights, but can you actually write this down? Okay, sure, I will.
yeah,
But like, I don't have time to go through a 20-minute explanation and then write you a novel about it.
yeah. It's like and I sometimes wonder, like, why it takes so long to do things. It's because of situations like that. Because like,
Hmm.
normally what turns into, like, a 5-minute appointment turns into a 15-minute appointment because we have to do it twice,
Hmm.
and that makes a big difference in, like, our efficiency, and we try and get people in and out of there on time,
I like that you
and
said a 15-minute appointment. That's my dream. I'm talking 45 minutes to an hour.
Sam and I go at different speeds, but I also talk very fast, and I'm very, well, quick.
Yeah, I'm not. I am slow.
It's alright, we balance each other out well, that's
Yeah.
why
I
we
mean,
do a podcast.
I'm good. Like, there's some things that I do efficiently,
Mm.
but for the most part, especially like big,
Oh,
in-depth
yeah.
things, I think, but it's all, well, I think also too, like what we're doing is different. I'm there to
Yes.
educate. I'm there, and I'm there to like kind of teach and foster like to the next step and all those types of things. Like that's my job,
Yes.
you know what I
And
mean?
you guys
So,
have more of a relationship too building, like, that's not I mean, I like try and build a relationship as much as I can in 15 minutes, but mine's like, "We have one important issue to discuss, why your dog is vomiting or why your dog's not doing well, and we're gonna focus on that," and you can go back to your primary veterinarian who have this wonderful relationship with and talk about your dog's
who will talk
allergies.
to you all day long like me.
Yes.
But the thing is I want to give everybody that time, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And the only way that I can do that is by not doing it multiple times a day. Like there's
Yeah.
only so many times a day that I can do that. Um, and that's another thing too, is like I do feel like people like are like, "Oh, I want Dr. Dawson to call me." And it's like, it's not that I don't want to. You may be
Mhm.
waiting for several days before I'm gonna be like done with all my appointments. I've called everybody with their stuff that's
Yeah.
waiting. You know what I mean? And then you just want me to call about whatever thing. It's like if one of the technicians can call and kind of get gauge from you like what's going on, they can come back
Mhm.
to me. We can ask a quick question. I can be in surgery. I can be answering questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do think sometimes people don't really understand that, you know, I don't really have that much time to just sit there on the phone for 20 minutes, half hour. And I have had times where like I'm like, okay, I'll make a quick phone call, and it's like you just can't. You're, okay, well, and I gotta go. You know what I mean? And you don't want to be rude at all, because I really do want to be there for people. I struggle with that a lot. Like, I'm not good at being like, I have to go now. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because I never really want to be rude. But so that is really hard for me, because I do really care. I really want to be able to help people, but at the same time, there's just only so many hours in the day that we have to do it.
Yeah, there's definitely not enough time, and it'd be nice to have more time, but just there's so many people waiting half the time, and
Yeah.
trying to be cognizant of that as owners is not always easy because your pet's the most important thing in the world right now, and
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't blame people for not thinking about that, but, as veterinarians, we're trying to think of there's 10 other pets that are also the most important thing in the world right now,
To
so
their
it's tough
Yeah.
for us to
Yeah. And I
we
think
try and
like the
triage.
initial diagnostics, the initial like the first time you're hearing something, you should hear it from the doctor. Like I
Mm,
definitely think that. But at the same time, our technicians are so smart, and they're
mm,
so like they really know what they're doing. And they also really, like, at this point they know me. Like they can like put on a white coat and like give my spiel. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, they've heard it so many times, they know.
Oh,
So like
yeah.
once they know about what condition we're talking about, like they're great about knowing also too, like when you've asked a question that they don't actually know the answer to. You know what I mean? They'll be like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I don't know. I'll go ask Dr. Dawson." Like, I don't really know. So,
yeah,
and that's I appreciate them immensely. Like, they are just such rock stars.
yeah.
Mine are like my right hand. Like, I don't know what I would do without them. They're just so wonderful.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. I can't do what I do without them, and I think that goes for both of us. I
No,
think
there's no way. No
they're
way.
just awesome people, so and they
Yeah.
care so much. They
They
really
do,
do.
and, like, the really good ones, like, read your mind.
They're like gold.
Oh,
Oh,
I
you're gonna
know. I mean, like, I will, like, be like, "Oh, everything's already out, like, I'm about to go do a surgery or a procedure or whatever," and I'm like, "Ah," like, it's all done, like, it's all, like, laid out, I just come in and I, like, do my thing, and then, and it's just like, I mean, I can't, like, they're so wonderful, and they really do care, like you said.
Yes.
It's just so important to me. And so then I feel very protective of them. Again, like, I think it goes back to that same thing in the beginning, and that's why these people, like, they come into this world of veterinary medicine, they are
Mm,
not getting paid what their human equivalents would be getting paid, not by a long shot,
yeah.
and they are amazing, and they do more. I mean, they are they have about like 8 different occupations all rolled into one, and they do it beautifully, and they do not get the recognition that they deserve, I don't think.
They truly don't. They only get a week a year from us as, like, vet tech week, and that's they need, like, a damn year at this point.
I know. I always try to, like, think of something good to do for them, because I love
Uh,
them so much.
they're good
Um,
people.
but, so in protecting them and us, if your dog is aggressive, please
Oh,
tell us.
please
Please
God.
tell us. And don't be embarrassed. Like, we're not really judging at all. I would much rather that somebody just says, "Hey, this situation isn't comfortable for them at home. They're just the greatest, sweetest animal, dog, cat, fill in the blank. But here they get stressed, they don't do well, that kind of a thing." Um, Putting a muzzle on an animal is not it's not the worst thing in the world.
It doesn't
As
hurt them
long
in any way, shape, or form.
No, I think in sometimes it comes, like, in some cases, not all. I mean, some dogs
Yeah,
are like, "No," but in some cases, like, they actually just kind of are like, "All right, I'm just gonna be
yeah.
calm now, like, I'm just gonna be cool." And I think that if you know you have a dog that is very aggressive, um, then you should train them to a basket muzzle. You should, like, just take the stigma away altogether, because
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it. It protects your dog, it protects us, and then we can get a better exam. If we are just like trying to get around a dog that's trying to eat us, well, they're not getting as good of an exam as I would like to do.
Oh, hell no. Like, I mean, no offense, at the end of the day, I gotta keep my fingers. Like, I
Yeah,
can't see any other I'm the only doctor there at night, like, I get bit, there's no one else to take over, so
right.
it's really important for and again, I think you said it best, like, we don't care that they're aggressive, we just want to know that they are so we don't or our technicians get hurt because it's a big part of, like, the number of injuries that happen in our field. There was some crazy statistic, and I wish I knew off the top of my head now, but, like, it's more dangerous I want and don't I gotta find the quote on this, But I think, like, number of injuries in the workplace, it's more common to have an injury in the workplace for a veterinarian or a veterinary technician than it is for a police officer or someone in the, like, in that industry.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
So, because and it makes sense, like, no offense, we're with animals all day, they're trying to and I don't this is not to disrespect anyone in the police force, I love what you guys do, you guys are the front lines, it's awesome. Um, hopefully the instances you guys do go through are few and far between because you guys are doing such great work.
Mhm.
We just see more frequently smaller incidents, just,
Yeah. Well, that's
injuries.
the thing is I think like you're counting like anytime you get like scratched or bit or it
Yeah,
doesn't have to take you to the hospital necessarily.
exactly,
It's
yeah,
not like
it's just, like,
apples to apples,
small
but
minor
yeah.
things that come up,
Yeah.
so
No,
but
but
yeah,
we
it's just
do. I
like
mean, and it's they get I mean, they can get infected. Like every time you get a dog bite, technically, I mean, whether your dog gets bit by another dog or they bite you,
mhm,
their mouths are not clean.
yes.
So go back and listen to the teeth episode. Like you they're not clean. So newsflash, you need antibiotics. Go see your doctor.
Yep, especially if you're a
Um
cat, man, you guys have
yeah, oh my
the
gosh, do
worst.
not wait for that to become oh, no, that's terrible. But yeah, so just like telling us, I think that
Mhm,
that's totally fair. And a lot of times if we can give the like if we have a relationship and we can give them medication ahead of time, or if your primary veterinarian, I can't talk, gave you trazodone or gabapentin or something,
mhm.
use it before you go see Robert. Like, don't not do that. If
Be
they're
really helpful.
yeah, I mean, unless they're, like, obtunded or something like that,
Yeah,
you can't
then don't do
you
that.
can't give it. But obviously, like, if they've hurt themselves, and they're just coming to see you, well, then, yeah, I mean, give them the meds that help.
Yeah.
Um, and making sure, that when you come, I can tell you one other one of my pet peeves is if
Yeah,
I
which
walk
one?
into the room and you're on your phone.
Oh, the phones. Oh, phones are a long list of things. That's well, you continue first, and we'll
No, that's I mean, drive it. I don't mind, like, we're all on our phones all the time,
mhm,
but when I'm at the doctor, if the doctor walks in, I put down the phone immediately.
yeah,
I try not to be in the middle of a conversation if I can avoid it, but if I walk in and somebody's like, "Oh, the doctor's here," I'm gonna, "Okay, time I'll give you the time, get off the phone, no problem." But if I walk in and you continue your conversation, I will in my head count 1,000, 2, 1,000, and walk out because it's rude.
yeah. No, and it's rude in any situation,
Oh,
but,
yeah.
like, especially when we're waiting to talk to you guys, and it's just and again, we understand, like, you can be on a phone call and trying to pass the time. That's totally
Yeah,
okay.
totally fine.
But just, say, "Hey, it's time for me to go," and we'll be happy to talk to you at that point. But
Yeah.
before then, Doctor Sam might leave in, like, 3 seconds.
Because here's the thing, there's almost about 4 or 5 things that I need to be doing, and I wanna give you 100% of my attention, but then I
Mhm.
also would like the same in return. Like, if I
Yeah,
come in and we're doing an exam, I need to know what's going on. If you're having a conversation on your phone, that's fine. You have your conversation. I will leave and I will come back when we're ready.
yeah.
But,
No, yeah.
I also have a packed schedule, so depending
Yes,
on how long
phones are
that
yeah.
phone call goes, and I would say it's pretty rare that that happens, but I've definitely had a few of those, and you can tell if it's an important conversation, if something horrible is happening and they're dealing with an emergency, it's quite obvious, it's quite evident, in which case I will start the exam and I will do it, obviously. But I mean, if you're having a like, hey girl, hey talk on the phone and like, we're just having a conversation and we're just like, hey, what's up? How you doing?
It's time to change yeah, definitely time to hang up and focus on the important bits for a bit and then
Yeah.
move on.
I mean, I'm not, it's just, I don't know. That is a really big pet peeve of mine. Um, so I don't know. I
Yeah.
maybe I'm a little bit jaded about that kind of stuff, but that one gets me for sure, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely I don't see it often, fortunately, but it's just when it does happen, it's just like, I gotta come on, man, or girl, whoever it is. So it's just not I don't know, we have things to do, and unfortunately, we have a lot of patients who want to see us, and are I
Yeah.
don't think they realize how crammed our schedules are, and we're trying to see as many patients in a day as we can. Not for our own benefit, trust me, I'd see less if I could, just because the
There's
records
just you
afterwards
gotta see
are
the oh, brutal.
yeah.
Oh, that's my favorite. When people bring like an extra pet or like
Oh.
and they're like, "Oh, can you just do this? It'll just take 5 minutes." Nothing I do takes 5 minutes. Nothing.
So, there's nothing that takes 5 minutes. It's like
Even if
or like
even if the time that I spent like quickly looking at something takes 5 minutes, I have to write a record. of
Um,
everything that happened. And
yes.
it might only look like what I did took 5 minutes, but I have been watching your dog walk around the room. I've watched them ambulate. I can tell that their neurologic status is okay. I can like, and then I'm going to note all of that because I'm anal retentive and I have to do
And
that.
that's why she's a wonderful doctor. Uh,
No,
but
but it's
also,
our
like,
job. Honestly, we do. We have to write everything down. We're not allowed to have an encounter that doesn't end up getting written. So it is a lot of extra work.
yeah, it does, man, it multiplies on itself. And when owner's in the room and they start talking about their other pet who isn't in the room, uh, I don't have time. I'm so sorry. Like,
I
I'm sure I know you love your pets, but it's always, I'll be honest, it's always the nice old lady every time. She's like, "And Sparky at home, he's been like this for years." And I'm like, "You're so cute, but I don't have time for this." I was
know.
like, "I
Yeah.
gotta go."
It is hard. It is hard.
Yeah,
And I think it's all about attitude too. Like I think sometimes like if you bring an extra pet and you're like, "Is it okay? Do you have time in your schedule today? I would really appreciate it." Or however you say it, like if we have time and I can fit it in, okay.
sure.
I don't really love when people are like, "I brought my dog, like you're going to see him." Like, you're kind of like telling me like you're going to look
Yeah,
at him
don't
and
assume.
it's like, I mean, you catch
Uh,
more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, like you said.
yes, you do. Uh,
So try to come in and be some honey. You know what I
yes.
mean? Make everyone's day better. Oh, and also people do like to bring us treats. We like to eat them. I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean,
Yeah, that's
veterinarians really like to eat.
that's honestly, I'm known in the clinic for, like, being a scavenger. It's terrible because, like, people leave food. It's I work overnight, so, like, all
Yeah.
the food that people bring during the day that they didn't eat, it's going bad. I'm like, "Well,
I guess
waste
I'll
not."
just eat this right now.
Yeah, it's like,
I
"Well,
know
I'm not gonna waste it."
the holidays are the hardest because I'm like,
Ugh,
oh, I can't eat anymore.
it's literally the worst. It's, like, so many cookies on those days, and, oh, I love it, but I hate it at the same time. I
Oh,
got such
I
a sweet
know. I
tooth.
know. It's like a
Uh,
love-hate relationship. We're like, oh,
I
it's
know.
so good, but I probably shouldn't do it. Um, oh, and then I think some other like just like quick ones that are just we don't get paid by food companies or drug companies to push medications or specific
Yep,
foods. We really don't.
yep,
I pay for my dog's food.
yep.
Like
I pay for mine too.
I like that's one that's like there's really no like ulterior motive except that like we're just trying to keep your dog on a complete and balanced food. We're trying to make the best recommendations that we can. Um when people tell me that they researched something,
But
by
your
doing a
degree means
Google search.
nothing. Your degree means nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I do like I don't think that it's not possible for people to research things and like find stuff out. And I learn stuff from clients all the time. Like I do. I think
Mm,
that it's sometimes people bring something in and I'm not above like I don't think I know everything and I
mm,
100% have learned things from people. But it is a little frustrating when you're, trying to educate about things that are dangerous for their pets and they get this information and they're like poo-pooing what you're saying. Like, well, I did my
yeah.
research. And it's like a Google search is not research. It's just not. It's
Yeah,
not the thing.
there's different types of research, unless you can quote me a study that's got some, uh, prospective nature to it. Um, yeah, I'm not gonna believe what you say, and again, I won't believe what I say either until I have something like that to back it up,
Yeah,
so
or like some like really robust, like anecdotal, like something, because a lot of
mm,
things in veterinary medicine don't have great studies behind them. That's true.
mm,
Like we try to do evidence-based medicine as much as we can, but we use things off label. A lot of things are based on experience and stuff like that. But there are just hard and fast truths too.
yeah,
And there are just like and things are changing, things are always evolving. I get that. And we're always learning new things. Um, but at the same time, I think it's a little bit like it can be a little bit frustrating when you're like, well, I like my Google search is equal to your veterinary degree.
yes, those 2 things are not equal, no matter what planet it is, but again, I think it's good to notice trends, like, I think if you notice trends that you wanna bring up in the clinic, that's great because honestly, that's how a lot of, like, seizures were associated with a lot of medications for flea and tick.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
because owners notice things that, like, I'd give my pet something and it'd have a seizure afterwards. So
Mhm.
it's good to notice those things and then bring them up, and then after a while, we're like, "Huh, this seems like a trend. We'll look into it." And then now we have data to support that's some medications cause seizures.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
it's
it's not like just to be clear, it doesn't cause seizures in like perfectly
yes.
normal pets.
Yes. No, it's true. Just
Just
enhances.
Just
Yes.
before everyone's like, I'm not gonna give my dog Nexgard
Yeah,
anymore.
it's like, flea and tick medication is very important. Thank you. It's very, very important.
Yes, it
But
is. And there can be better choices, right? Like
mm,
given the state of like, yeah, if your pet is known to have a seizure disorder, maybe you can steer clear of ones that might lower the seizures
yeah.
threshold or something like that. But that's not to say that they cause seizures. It's they can affect pets that have that as a
Yes.
problem.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that,
Yes,
because that's very important detail.
it is.
All of a sudden, half the public's like, "This doctor told me I can't
I
give
know.
my pet
I
seizure
heard it
medicine."
on a podcast. I was like, no, no,
It's
that's
like,
not what he meant.
"Oh god,
And I do
that's
think
all I
that's
need."
the other part of it too, is that like when you are doing research, if you really don't actually know like how to decipher what different things mean, it's not to say that you're not smart enough to decipher it. It's that like there can be nuance because even just like the way that something is presented
Mhm.
can make something seem like, oh, this causes seizures. No, it doesn't cause seizures in a perfectly normal pet. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? So
Yeah.
I think that and that's with everything, right?
Yep.
Like food with I mean you name it, you can find something to support something that you believe if you want to. You know, I mean,
Mhm.
I could do a Google search and find almost anything.
You really can. It's actually kinda scary if you ever have some bored time, not about your pets, but about anything. You can
Yeah.
just literally search for about anything random, and someone's probably looked at it or written about it at some point in the last 10 years, and it's just
Mhm.
especially in the Reddit community, be careful up there. It's dangerous.
Yeah, and it so it can. I mean, like, and so it can be really, really hard to get good information. But that's again something else that we're trying to do, right? Is to like give people an avenue. Like, you have questions, email us. Like Brittany did at podcast at myBalto, and we can answer things, we can address it here. And like I think, trying to find reputable sources for things. And people bring me things all the time, or they'll ask
Mm,
about a supplement, or and I'll look it up. I again, I do not think I know everything. There's too much out there to know.
yeah.
And there are definitely times where we have learned things like you said, Robert, like sometimes adverse reporting will lead us down an avenue or like, oh wow, we didn't realize this correlation or we didn't see this or something like that. Some medications, we look at things rigorously, but at the same time, a lot of stuff we use off label in veterinary medicine and
Mhm.
you know, we obviously we're always learning,
Yep.
but yeah, I think there just has to be like a mutual respect, right? Like I think there just has
Mm,
to kind of be this like I'll listen to what you have to say. I'll try to understand your point of view, but at the same time if you're doing something that I think is truly damaging to your pet, I'm going to tell you. And
yep.
then, and there's another reason right there. I think getting back to like what started this whole thing, um, the firing thing, again, I do think it's pretty rare. Like people don't just get like fired all the time. So let's just say that. But if your ideals don't match your veterinarians, sometimes it's okay to also just like fire yourself. Go find somebody that like lines up with you. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
really no reason to have a combative relationship with your veterinarian. There are there's going to be somebody who you align with. And so I
Mhm.
think that's what you should do. And remember, like you should go and advocate for your pet. You should find somebody who is willing to meet you where you are and wants to treat your
Totally.
pet that way, you know?
Total 100%. Like I said, there's holistic veterinarians out there for those who are interested in that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's
There's people who believe in raw food, there's people who, all sorts of stuff. I don't I'm not one that supports like raw food. I don't think you should feed a raw diet, but like and we can get into that. That's a whole nother conversation we can get into a
I'm
different
sure
day.
that'll come up soon.
Yeah. And like I do try to educate about like the grain-free stuff and like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's just food. I mean, that's one thing.
Mhm.
But there's some people who are like really don't want to use the flea and tick preventatives. There's people who want to go like and use a natural thing. I don't really think that, you know, there's any really natural ones that work. So
I think it's healthy combination of Western and Eastern medicine, but
I agree.
don't forget Western medicine because it's
Yeah.
there's a reason it's there. And
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's just some sad stories of
Yeah.
death
No,
with it.
it's true. And the thing is, like, I'm all about the adjunctive stuff. Like, you
Yeah,
want to do this and that. I love it. I think that's
sounds
great.
great.
But yeah, but I think you do it can be kind of dangerous if you start like just saying like, oh, I won't do that at all. I just am not comfortable with it. It's like, well, you
There's
know.
a reason for it.
Right, exactly. So I think just always advocate for your pets and then find someone who lines up with you and wants to help you and meet you where you are. And I think you'll find more veterinarians than not actually really do care and really want to do that. They don't want to fire you. We always want to find a
No.
way to work together. So just the big takeaways, just treat everybody kindly, treat everybody
Yes.
nicely, be nice to the staff. They
Yes.
really want to help your pets, and you will get so much further being kind, especially to the girls up front and to the technicians on the way to the doctor.
I cannot emphasize that enough. So be nice.
And again, send us your questions at podcast at myBalto.
Perfect.
And this has been a super fun one. Hopefully people enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I kind of like I feel like relaxed now. I'm like, ooh,
Feel
I got them
good
all.
venting session.
So well, thank you everyone for listening. This has been the Pause It podcast with Dr. Robert and Dr. Sam.
Have a good night, everyone.